Axe body spray. It's better than nothing. At the dawn of time, God spent 6 days creating the universe and everything within. Our glory and wonders we all owe to Him. But it is said on the 7th day that He took rest from this monumental task, relishing the good work He had done. This, however, is a misconception, as on the 7th day He actually invented Pong for the Atari 2600. The Atari 2600 was host to many of video games' original hits, as they were adapted from arcade cabinets into home gaming experiences. Asteroids, Space Invaders, and Pac-Man were all very simple score-based games focused on surviving as long as possible and attaining crazy high scores until you would eventually die and be forced to start again from scratch. Despite the simple concept, these were some of the console's best sellers, as they all captured the great exhilarating feeling of controlled stress. I'm sure you've experienced it if you played these games. Those moments where you're on your last life and you're just barely about to beat your high score. These games were all over the place back then, but slowly got phased out as video games evolved into a more deeper experience. But the experience these games gave you still live on in the genre colloquially known as Horde shooters. Horde shooters have always existed in game modes and various games, but really hit the mainstream back in the late 2000s, when 2 very big game companies released their takes on the subgenre. These 2 were Left 4 Dead, released in 2008, and Call of Duty World at War, released in 2007. World at War had the regular multiplayer and story mode most were accustomed to with their typical Call of Duty game, but if you were to complete the story mode on any difficulty, you were treated to a special mission after the credits. Your plane crashes in some unknown foggy field, and all of your comms equipment is out. And to make the situation worse, the dead are rising from their graves to attack you and your squad. This is Nacht der Untoten, German for Night of the Undead. It was an extra game mode they made near the end of development, when they had the idea to make a bit of a tower defense game mode based on the German side of D-Day. Obviously, that didn't really go over too well as they didn't want people playing as Nazis. So instead they went with the classic idea of Nazi zombies. As I said, it was originally based on tower defense games, and more specifically, The Last Stand. But while they moved on from the tower defense origins right away, you can really see the elements of it in the first map. But going forward, they streamlined it a lot more and set the foundations for what most other Horde modes and shooters would follow in the coming years. I was always a bigger fan of the classic style of zombies. It was a bit sad to see the direction they were taking it at the end of Black Ops 2 and during Black Ops 3. There's no longer this fight against an unbeatable enemy, but instead a multi-dimensional odyssey with Cthulhu monsters trying to give you the business. With all these special zombie variants and massive Easter egg quests, you need to take on just access stuff that was kinda out in the open on the other maps. It was a little bit of a tragedy. But Black Ops 3 was built in with the ability to create and play custom zombies maps. So, if you wanted more of the complicated stuff, there was the core line stuff that was coming out. But if you wanted to play a more central and classic zombies map, there are people constantly making them on the Steam Workshop. Hell, if you ever felt the need to jump in and start blowing away a bunch of Teletubbies with an M249 squad automatic weapon, you could probably hop on Steam and find at least a dozen. Zombies was always a favorite of mine back when I was younger, but I found myself losing more interest in it as the years went on. I liked that they were introducing story and whatnot, but with every map the game mode kept getting more complicated. So, what if you wanted something with a central story? You were on the prowl for something a little more full, a little more robust. But without all the bullshit Easter egg steps needed to complete the maps. Well, then you were in luck, because as I said previously, Left 4 Dead was released back in 2008. Left 4 Dead, developed by Valve back when they actually made games, is a fully fleshed out campaign, which was uncommon for Horde shooters back then. This game has you start as 4 survivors running from safe house to safe house, as you try to find a way to get out of Dodge and avoid becoming a delicious
barbecue bacon burger.
While this game isn't high score based or round based, it still shares many of the same fundamentals of Horde shooters, due to zombies spawning infinitely, leading to many high tension moments. Throw some special zombies into the mix and some spooky music, and you got an extremely stressful survival horror shooter that only gets more extreme on the harder difficulties. Admittedly though, I do think this game could use a little variety in the gameplay, as most campaigns tend to play out the same. You'll run around, look for supplies, set off an alarm, and attract a huge horde of zombies that you gotta fight and or run through to get to the safe room. The last level of the campaign usually has you doing something special, like you gotta defend an area, or fill up the gas in a car or something. This leads to a feeling a bit repetitive in longer play sessions, but I think this game is perfect for sitting down with a few friends for an hour or two, and beating 1 or 2 of the campaigns at a time. As the years progressed, more and more game companies were putting their own spin on horde shooters. We eventually saw an evolution into a sort of new subgenre: extraction shooters. This takes the ball-busting intensity of the horde shooter, but makes it a bit more objective-based. This typically stars 4 nobodies dropping into an area to complete some tasks as waves and waves of enemies come to kill you, and eventually extracting after completing said task. This new subgenre has been blowing up in the last couple of years, due to many great hits coming out, as well as the fact that these games are typically an extremely fun time with your friends. I personally have been getting sucked into 2 of them lately, with Ghost Ship Games, Deep Rock Galactic, and Arrowhead Games, Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 is the long-awaited second game of the Helldivers franchise, in which you are a member of an elite fighting force called the Helldivers, who helldive to various planets to spread the great managed democracy of Super Earth. If you couldn't tell, this game is heavily inspired by the 1997 film Starship Troopers, as well as the Halo franchise's ODST Troopers, I think at least. It gives this game a unique and fairly humorous aesthetic. Admittedly though, later on I felt like the whole shtick was getting a little old. And I felt especially that the player dialogue that you would hear during the missions was extremely grating, and I wish that there was a way to turn it off. Despite this being a 4-player extraction shooter, missions in Helldivers 2 don't rely too much on teamwork. That's not to say there's no teamwork in the game. Coordinating with your team to figure out which objectives are getting done, what stratagems you're using, and who's doing what is very important. After that, however, I would suggest splitting into teams of 2, as especially with the harder difficulties, you'll be hard-pressed for time to get all the objectives done. It will also prevent more friendly fire from happening, as it is very easy to kill your teammates in this game.
Yeah, metal. Oh, Jesus!
This leads to a lot of times where you're running into situations alone or with a single partner. The main thing that's going to prevent you from lone wolfing it though, is certain enemies are designed to only have their backs exposed to damage. But this can be easily mitigated depending on what stratagems you're bringing to the mission. I have a lot of fun with this game with my friends, but honestly, I can't help but feel that there's a few things that hold it back a little. Throughout my time playing, I've noticed a fair amount of bugs and glitches that have either crashed the game or caused me to die. This is always kind of infuriating, but my main issue is the weapon balancing in this game. I feel like if I want to see any amount of success, I need to be running a shotgun and pick out 4 from my selection of 9 stratagems, depending on the mission, of course. This has led to a lot of my playtime feeling very samey, and a desperate need for some experimentation. I may be alone in this, as I haven't looked up much online discourse about the game, but I hope the devs have some plans for bug fixes and weapon tuning in the future.
I'm too young to die!
Stop whining! Rock and stone in the heart.
Lock and load, lad.
Deep Rock is a funny little game about dwarves. You are expert miners dropping into the deep cave systems of Hoxus 4 to dig up all sorts of gems and ore. But there is a catch. While this may be the most profitable mine in the galaxy, it's also the deadliest, as it seems most wildlife on this planet are specially designed to kill and eat you. Teamwork plays a much bigger role in Deep Rock, mostly due to every class being unique. While each dwarf has different weapons and grenades they can equip, their support and traversal tools is what really defines the class, and what role you should be taking in your squad. This is extremely necessary for getting in and out of the caves as quickly as possible, because unlike other extraction shooters, Deep Rock doesn't have the traditional time limit. Instead, your time limit is how much ammo you have. And with enemies infinitely spawning, it is very easy to run out of ammo and fail the mission. This creates many situations of that controlled stress where you're desperately looking for any scraps of nitro that you might have missed, just so you can finish the last bit of the mission and get out. My favorite part about Deep Rock, though, is the modulability of the classes. Even though each class only has 3 primaries, 3 secondaries, and 4 grenades, they're able to achieve this by having an extreme amount of experimentation with each weapon, through a wide selection of upgrades and later on down the line overclocks that can dramatically change the feel of the weapon. This introduces a whole heap of subclasses that bring a lot of life to the game, and that keeps the game feeling extremely fun and fresh, even 200 hours into the game. Though I feel it does take a little too long to unlock stuff, as it's all based around completing these assignments. Assignments on average are around 3 or 4 missions, meaning it will take 2 to 3 hours in-game just to unlock anything in the beginning. Personally, I prefer the gameplay of Deep Rock. I think it's mostly due in part to the traversal tools and the fully destructible terrain. Both games, though, are classic experiences, and I'm glad we're seeing a lot more of these co-op oriented games. Even if you're not aiming for those moments of controlled stress by playing on the higher difficulties, you're always guaranteed to have a good time while blasting away some bugs. Admittedly, this does make me a little sad as the head of the Society of Junior Entomologists to see them wither and die. That'll be all from me, though. I love you, and thanks for watching.